Okay, let's hit the ground running. In our first video, we talked about what a syndrome really is. We established the fact that there are many different factors, underlying conditions, predisposing issues, lifestyle concerns, and previously undiagnosed diseases that come together to create a syndrome. We looked at a syndrome of a fever and a sore throat. We found out that people can have the same syndrome for a variety of different reasons. We now know that fibromyalgia syndrome is really no different. What causes fibromyalgia symptoms for one person is not necessarily exactly what causes fibromyalgia symptoms for another person. In the second video, we talked about the layers of dysfunction, and we revealed some of the most common layers that we see in clinical practice. It was not meant to be exhaustive, so I may not have mentioned some of the underlying issues and conditions that you personally struggle with, but I'm sure you see how it may apply to you. Today, I want to talk about how we can unpeel the layers of dysfunction in a clinical setting. I'm going to let you listen to one of our patients tell their story. All of this is in an effort to help you see your personal road to recovery. In a clinical setting, we unpeel the layers of dysfunction in what we call the discovery phase. The discovery phase includes a complete and thorough medical history and metabolic assessment forms which determine what the most likely underlying causes may be. The assessment forms play a major role in determining layers of dysfunction. A lot of times the patient has already been diagnosed with several conditions, so that gives us a bit of a head start, if you will, in discovery. By really listening to our patients, we get insight into potential roadblocks to health as well. This could lead to additional diagnosis, lifestyle issues that aggravate the underlying condition that act as triggers. That's why you may have good and bad days. The assessment forms and advanced testing that we do often reveals things like leaky gut syndrome, autoimmune diseases, yeast overgrowth, pathogenic and opportunistic bacteria, parasites, chronic viruses, adrenal fatigue, food sensitivities, and systemic inflammation. And these are just the most common. Now, when you consider the concept of multiple layers of dysfunction, every fibromyalgia patient that I have ever treated has 3 or 4 or 5 different things going on. As we resolve each of these underlying conditions, we see the restoration of health and actually beat fibromyalgia. At this point, I want you to meet a patient of mine by the name of Dorothy. She is a classic case of fibromyalgia. I want you to really listen carefully at the conditions that Dorothy was diagnosed with. I want you to make a note of the aggravating factors that we found during our discovery phase. Her video is really short. It's just about 3 minutes, but we'll talk about what she says on the other side of the video. If you would, tell me your name.
Dorothy Brady.
Okay, Dorothy. Tell me why you came to see me. What was your diagnosis before you came in?
I had lupus, fibromyalgia, IBS, Raynaud's, and depression.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And had you been to other places before?
I'd been to other doctors,
Okay.
and they just kept giving me pills, which
Weren't helping you
No,
much.
and just making other things worse.
Okay. And then, of course, we practice functional medicine here, but we did some lab testing. Well, we talked to you. We got your
Right.
history.
Mm-hmm.
We did a thorough history. We did a timeline. We looked at things that might affect you. And then we did a metabolic assessment form, which basically was a series of questions that break down into different body organs, for instance, or systems where your symptoms are. And we decided on a course of action, starting with testing, right?
Right.
Had you ever had any of that testing done before?
No.
Okay. So during that testing, we did a stool and a saliva sample. We found
yeast, right? We
Right.
found yeast overgrowth. We found bacterial dysbiosis. We found that your enzymes weren't digesting your food, which is what we talked about a minute ago.
Right.
And through the adrenal stress index, we found that you did have some adrenal fatigue and also gluten sensitivity
Yes.
and decreased secretory IgA, which is the mucosal lining of the gastrointestinal tract. So once we found that out, we set a course of action which involved diet and lifestyle changes and some pharmaceutical grade supplements. And this is, how far into the program are we, would you say?
Oh, starting.
Close to 3 months?
Probably close to 3 months, I think.
Yeah. And then how are you feeling today opposed to the way you were the day you walked in here?
Oh, I'd have to say 85 to 90% better. I'm not nearly as tired. I've got more energy. Aches and pains are going away. The Raynaud's has decreased. Not having so much trouble with my stomach. I'm doing pretty good.
Okay. Now, if someone manages to watch this video that has, because this is not new for you. You didn't just get sick. This has been something you've dealt with for decades.
Decades, yes.
I mean, decades. So within just 3 months, we've been able, with all natural care, to turn your symptoms around to the point that you're saying, well, somewhere 80, 85, 90% better. That's pretty amazing. But if someone is watching this that's frustrated, that's been to many doctors and gotten no relief, would you recommend that they at least look into this type of treatment?
Oh, absolutely, because I have found that other doctors I went to, they never did any testing. They just, well, I think this is it, here's a pill. And we never got to the root of it. And getting to the root of it, finding out what I shouldn't be eating and not eating it, it's made all the world difference.
Yes, definitely. Well, I want to thank you for taking time to share. I know it's kind of, you're vulnerable in a sense, but you know what it's like to struggle.
Oh, yeah.
You know what it's like to fight and to feel frustrated and discouraged because answers seem to be just hard to find.
It is.
But I thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your testimony with folks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Wow, talk about multiple layers of dysfunction. She is a perfect example. Our initial interview revealed that she had been diagnosed with, of course, fibromyalgia, Raynaud's, irritable bowel syndrome, lupus, and depression. Our advanced testing revealed that she also had a gluten sensitivity, yeast overgrowth, and parasites. Once we discovered what the multiple layers of dysfunction were, we unpeeled them through pharmaceutical grade supplements, dietary and lifestyle changes, followed by a period of detoxification where we healed and sealed her gut lining. Now, let's establish the fact of our first video where we talked about a syndrome. Remember, a syndrome is simply a collection of symptoms that can be caused by a variety of different issues. In the second video, we talked about multiple layers of dysfunction, and you can see that very clearly in Dorothy's case. This video is about unpeeling the layers of dysfunction. Knowing what the layers are, of course, is important before you can peel them back. In Dorothy's case, she had 2 previously diagnosed conditions that were actually autoimmune diseases. That means her own immune system was attacking different parts of her body. I recognize that she may always have these autoimmune conditions, that they may not be able to be cured, but they can be managed to the point that she's almost unaware of their existence. The irritable bowel syndrome was actually caused by a combination of gluten sensitivity, yeast overgrowth, and parasites. So we peeled those back. Those were actually major aggravating factors of her immune system, which in turn made the underlying autoimmune disease worse. They triggered the autoimmune disease. As we unraveled these issues, she got better. And that's exactly where we're headed with you once we build the foundations for health.